Hi, welcome to howtod&d. My name is Fred Wheeler and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and specifically I'm going to go through a beginner Dungeon Master workshop. And what I want to deal with is your very first game. Your very first game is probably going to be, it was terrifying for me, it's probably going to be terrifying for you. I know some people, I've met a few, who start off and they seem to just, they're like ducks to water and it's all easy, but it's not very common. I think most people who start off dungeon mastering get quite nervous, the butterflies set in, and you just sort of all tighten up and you kind of panic a little bit. So we're going to talk about how to actually deal with that sort of issue, your very first time as a dungeon master. And you know what you're trying to do is you're essentially trying to do something you've never done before. You're actually trying to be a dungeon master, but you don't know how to do it. Now you can go and watch other people doing it, which is a really good idea, and you can think that you're prepared, but once you actually have to do it yourself and take the reins, it can be a bit unsettling, as I've said. So here are a few things that I want you to pay attention to. One, do something that will relax you. I don't really care what it is, as long as you are relaxed when you're going into the game, as much as you can. You won't be totally relaxed. If you're totally relaxed, you're probably asleep. But try to relax, do something that will help. Listen to music. I've actually talked about people saying, using beer, not too much, just a little bit. Things like that, anything that will help you calm down. You can't avoid mistakes. Guaranteed that all the dungeon masters before you weren't able to avoid their mistakes. And essentially, mistakes are an indication that you are learning. You actually have to make mistakes yourself or see somebody else make mistakes to actually learn something new. And the learning that you do best, the really concrete learning that you're going to actually take on board, are the mistakes that you made, not that somebody else made. So just remember that when you start making mistakes, because you will, and it's all right. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Everybody did. Even the best of us at Dungeon Mastering have. I can tell you that Matthew Mercer and Chris Perkins, they've all made plenty of mistakes. And anybody who says they didn't make mistakes is lying. I want you to reduce your expectations of yourself. One of the hardest things is everybody wants to be perfect and be phenomenal, be a live wire, try to duplicate what they've seen that other dungeon masters do, or they've seen on the internet or TV or video. It really doesn't matter, but lower those expectations. You can't expect too much of yourself the very first time. I want you to listen to what the players are actually saying. Now remember, 20% of what they say that's only part of what they're communicating to you. The other part is the body language and how they shift and move and their reactions. So you need to pay attention to what they say, their body language, and their reaction to what you do and say at the table. Now you have done this before. Almost everybody has a fairly good understanding of body language, because 80% of our communication is body language, and you do it every day. It's a skill you've always had. So don't worry about thinking, I don't know how to read body language. You do. You have done it every single day, probably from the age of 1, even 2 onward. Pay attention to what they actually are doing with their body. Are they folding their arms? Are they opened wide? Those sorts of things indicate whether they are having a good time. You can usually pick up if somebody is having a good time. People laugh or smile, then you know they're having a good time. If they're frowning and they look sort of grumpy and they're off doing something else, then you know they're not having a good time. So make sure you're having a good time and they're having a good time. And if things aren't going well, call a break. And then have a think about what you could do differently. Come back 5-10 minutes later and do something differently. Another alternative is simply to just sit down, take the break, and just talk to the players and say, look, give me some options. Tell me what would make the game funner. What would make it fun for you? What would make it exciting for you? What is it you wanted to get out of Dungeons and Dragons? What can I do to change things? Because right now people aren't having fun or they're getting bored. And just use the feedback from the players to help you guide your session. I know that sounds robotic, but Seriously, I ask for feedback at the end of every single session. Every single session I will say, did you have a good time? What did you like? What didn't you? And those are sorts of questions that you can ask at the end of your session, but you can ask them in the middle of a session if things aren't going well. Now, the first time dungeon mastering is always the roughest, but it will get easier with practice. You will get better at it, and it won't be quite so frustrating or stressful. I know the stress, I always found it quite stressful when I started out, but it will reduce. I want you to keep everything really simple. I don't care how complicated the adventure is that you've selected. You can chop things away and make it more simple for you to actually manage, because you have to get through this stuff, right? So make it simple for you. If that means reducing the number of monsters, then do it. I'd also suggest try to stick with level 1. Level 1 characters, that's the lowest complexity you can get. Start at level 1, don't start at level 3, don't start at level 5, start at level 1. It's much easier for you to manage. Also, when it comes to monster types, if you have more than one monster type, that's probably too much to start off with. Stick with one monster type in your hands, or that you have to control at one time. And that'll make it simpler. You only have to have one stat block open to read and function through. If you don't want to get rid of all the monster types, use them in waves. So maybe you have the minions, the smaller troops come in first, and then the big baddie is at the final wave, the second wave, once all of the minions have been disposed of. And then you're still essentially only controlling one monster type, but you've done it in one combat, and you've done it in waves, so you've reduced the amount of stuff you have to actually track. And there's no flipping back and forth through pages, which you'll always find difficult. I still find that difficult. Or you can just photocopy your stat blocks and have them on little cards so they're available for you straight away, so you don't have to flip through the pages. Also, when it comes to the number of creatures, monsters, NPCs that you're dealing with in combat, I would stick to maybe 6 as your maximum. Don't go any higher than that. Otherwise, you've got too many things to control at the table. You've got enough to do as it is. Just reduce the number of things you have to actually maneuver around the table, whether that be theatre of the mind or you're using a grid and a battle map of some kind. What happens if the players ask me, can I do something, and I don't know what the rules for that are? The rules don't cover this. What do I do? Okay, so relax. Pick up a D20, that's a 20-sided dice, and say, look, I want you to roll a 20-sided dice, and you're going to add whatever skill or ability modifier you think is related to that particular task. All you have to do is get through it. It's either going to be a skill check or an ability check. And if you're not too sure between the difference of doing a contest or just a straight difficulty class check or DC check, that's difficulty class where you set the number that they have to actually succeed at, don't worry about it. Just make it a difficulty class. Don't worry about the contest. You can worry about contests later on if you're unsure about them. So setting a difficulty class, just pick a number. Does it seem easy? Does it seem hard? Okay, if it's easy, it's a 5 or a 10. If it's reasonably hard, then it's going to be a 15 or 20. If it's near impossible, then it's 25, 30. Pretty simple, nothing to it. And literally, just go through the skills and have a look. What skill is kind of related to what they want to do? Pick the one that's most suitable. If there's no skill, then just pick an ability modifier. What ability type is actually going to be useful to you in this situation? And then pick the one that's going to work. Now, I need to give you some examples, and I realize that. I don't want to go into it too much because I feel like when it comes to a beginner, if I throw too much information at you all at once, then it's going to be too hard for you to manage. Today's workshop is just about the things that I talked about. Take those, put them into your first session. And if you're beyond your first session, there will be some of the things that I've just talked about now that you can apply to future sessions when you run your game or game session for the second time or the third time or something like that. So if you found this video helpful or informative, please share, like and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, there's that little bell thing. Apparently you click the bell thing, and then of course I understand you get the occasional notification. I honestly can't stand notifications from videos. So I understand if you don't want to click the little bell. You should just come to my channel because every day there's a new video. If you have any questions about being a beginner dungeon master or just dungeon mastering full stop, then just put them in the comments. Now, if you want to support me, watching my videos is really helpful. But I don't know if you've noticed, but YouTube is flagging just about every single video and demonetizing them or classifying them as not suitable for most advertisers, even things that shouldn't be. And this is because the robot is just picking up on keywords that are spoken or in the tags and the titles. So watching my videos is great, but I'm not going to get an awful lot of revenue from that. If you really want to support me, I am absolutely not starting a Patreon page. I don't care because my understanding is that Patreon has just gone downhill. Not an advantage to you, and I don't feel that it'll be an advantage to me. If you want to support me, if you buy stuff online, then just click on the affiliate link below in the description. I will put it in there later, and that can help me. I get a small commission, you pay no extra, and if you don't buy stuff online, it's fine too. I don't mind. But that's how you can support me. And I think that's the best thing. I don't really want people paying me to do this. I just want people to actually support me if they feel like supporting me. And that's it. So, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.